LeetCode problem 532, K-diff pairs in an array. This is an algorithm problem of medium difficulty, and we are given an array of integers nums and an integer k, and we want to return the number of unique K-diff pairs in the array. A K-diff pair is an integer pair, nums index I, nums index j, where the following are true. The indexes for I and j are between 0 and nums.length. I is not equal to j, and the difference nums I minus nums j is equal to k. The goal of this problem is to find pairs of numbers within nums whose difference is equal to k, and the pairs must be unique so we cannot repeat any pairs. So to start off this problem, since we're just being given an array, it's clear that we're going to want to loop through the array to find our pairs. So to start off, we're going to want to create some variables. We're going to want to create an empty object called previous that will store all of the values that we have checked while looping through the array. And then we want a counter variable called pairs that will keep track of the amount of pairs we have come across. Since we need unique pairs, it would be best to sort the nums array in ascending order so we know when to skip a number that we have already come across. So we're going to want to sort the array using nums.sort and sort it in ascending order, which will give us this newly sorted array. And then we're going to want to start our loop. Inside the loop, we're going to want to set a key variable that is set to the current indexed number. So on our first pass through, we're going to set key equal to nums I, which will be 1. And then we're going to want to check if the key variable is not present in the previous hash. So right now, our object is empty. So we're going to want to check if the previous hash does not contain the key, which it does not. So inside of this conditional, we're going to want to set a variable called diff. And diff will be equal to key minus k. So in this case, we have 1 minus 2, which is equal to -1. Now, with this difference variable set, we're going to want to check if difference is inside the previous object. So we're going to say, or create a new conditional saying, if previous different does not equal undefined, so if it does exist in the pair, in the previous object, then we're going to want to increase our pairs by 1. So we're going to do pairs plus plus. Now, in this case, the object is currently empty, so it does not exist. So we're not going to increase our pairs. And after this, we want to add this value to the previous object. So we're going to say previous key is equal to 1. So now this value exists in our previous object. So now when we go through our loop, we're going to go to the next value, which is also 1. We're going to set our key to 1, and we're going to check if previous key exists, which it does, because we had just set it to 1 right here. So we're going to skip this and go to the next one. We're going to go to 3. So now key is equal to 3. We're going to check if 3 exists in the previous array, which it does not. We only have the value 1. Now we're going to set the difference equal to key minus k. So in this case, instead of 1 minus 2, it's going to be 3 minus 2. So it's going to be 3 minus 2, which is equal to 1. Now we're going to check if difference is present inside the previous object, which it is. We currently have a value of 1 inside the previous object. So what we want to do is run this right here, increase our pairs counter by 1. After we increase the pairs counter by 1, we're still going to want to add this previous key we're still going to want to add the key of 3 to the previous array. So we know not to check for it anymore. So this is going to be up here. And then on the next loop, we're going to run it for 4. And the key is going to be equal to 4. We're going to check if 4 is present in this object, which it is not. The difference will be 4 minus 2, which is equal to 2. We're going to check if 2 is inside the previous object, which it is not. It is only 1 and 3. So we're going to say previous 4 is equal to 1. So now 4 will be added to the object. And then on the last index of the array, we have 5. And our key will be 5. We're going to check if 5 is inside the previous object. We're going to set difference to 5 minus 2, which in this case is equal to 3. We're going to check if 3 is inside the previous object, which it is right here. So we're going to increase our pairs by 1. And then, although it's unnecessary, we will be adding 5 to the previous object, and we're going to give it a value of 1. And at the end of this, our pairs will have a value of 2, which is the output we are looking for. Now, there is an edge case with this problem. And the edge case is when we come across a value that is equal to 0. So if k is equal to 0, then we're going to want to run some different code. So if k is equal to 0, that basically means that we're going to look for the same number twice. So in our previous conditionals, when we saw the same number, we were skipping it. We weren't looking for it again. But in this case, we want to find the same number that we have seen previously. So if k is equal to 0, we're going to want another conditional that checks if previous key, so we still have the key value right here, we're going to check if it has a value of 1 in the previous object. If the key is equal to 1, that means we already have this value in the object. So we're going to want to increase our pairs by 1. So we're going to do pairs plus plus. And regardless whether or not it is equal to 1, we're going to want to do previous key plus plus. So we know not to look for this number again if it is not equal to 1. So let's say in this given example, we have 2 1s. So on the first pass through, we're going to see if previous key does not exist, which it does not. We will have an empty object. And at the end of this, we're going to add 1 to the object. Now in the next pass through, we're going to check if key does not exist. It does, but we're also going to check if k is equal to 0. So now inside this, we're going to check if key is equal to 1, which it is, because we instantiate that value on this first pass through. We're going to set previous key equal to 1. So this will increase our pairs by 1. But let's say this 3 right here is also another 1. On this previous pass through, we increased our pairs by 1, but we also increased the value of the key by 1. So now inside this object, the value of 1 was increased from 1 to 2 because we have come across 2 instances of the value 1. So if k is equal to 0, we still want to check if the key is equal to 1. If it's equal to 2, then we don't want to increase the pairs because we only want unique pairs. We only want unique pairs for this problem. So that does it for the diagram. I think it'll be a little bit more clear when we write it out in code. So I'm going to start typing this out. So now we're in the editor, and let's just start this out how we diagrammed it. The first thing we want to do is create our helper variables. So we're going to set previous to an empty object, And then we want our pairs counter, which will be instantiated at 0. Next, we want to sort the given nums array. So we're going to do nums.sort. And we want it in ascending order. So we're going to do A minus B. And now we want to start our loop. And this is going to say for, and we're going to start a variable called I at 0. And we're going to run it as long as I is less than nums.length. And we're going to increment I at each pass. And now the first thing we're going to want to do is set the key. So we're going to say key is equal to the I index number inside of nums. And now we want to start our first conditional. This will be an if and else if statement. So we're going to start with if previous key does not exist. Then we want to create our difference variable. So we're going to say let diff equal key minus k. And then we want to check if the difference is present inside the previous object. So we're going to say, we're going to start a new conditional. If previous difference does not equal undefined, then we want to increase our pairs by 1. And regardless, we want to add the key to our previous object. So we're going to say previous key is equal to 1. Now on the other end of this first conditional, we're going to say else if, and this is where we check for the edge case if k is equal to 0. And we create our inner conditional, which will be if previous object contains a key of key that has a value of 1, then we want to increase pairs because we have found its pair with this new key. We want to increase it by 1. And then we want to increase the value for the key in the previous object. So it will no longer be equal to 1. So we will no longer be checking for a pair for it because it will no longer be a unique pair. So that does it for our loop. And we're going to want to return pairs as our answer. So now I want to run this with the test cases and see if there's any errors in my code. We're getting an accepted answer. Let's run it with all the test cases. We get accepted again. So I'm going to submit this as our answer and see what we get. And we get success. We get 79 milliseconds. Great runtime, great memory usage. And that's going to do it for this problem. If you have any questions, if you have an answer of your own, or if you have any improvements to my code, please leave them in the comments below. And thanks again for watching.